Good evening, everybody. This is Kiana. Welcome to the Kiana Canada Show. Before we get started, I've been having issues with mic because I didn't bring my large microphone, and the small microphone that I have, which is this one that I actually purchased when I was in the Republic of Ireland, it's not working with this for some reason. So I just need to make sure that the mic is working, that we're not having it. Okay, I think we're good. Let's see. So I want to apologize that I don't have my big mic with me today. It's just that I live further away from the university than I did before, and I just don't feel like walking all the way back there and then coming all the way back. So today the volume is not going to be that great, but I hope that this episode is reflective and that you understand exactly what I'm going through, and maybe we can talk about something else. Let me just check again. Okay. Let me just make sure. Okay. So before we get into today's topic, I always give this announcement. As you know, I am going through transnational repression. It's not called anything else. And actually, today's episode is going to be talking about transnational repression. But I am going through transnational repression. Basically, what that is, it's where states are reaching across their borders to silence the dissent of their citizens. The dissent does not necessarily need to be the dissent of its own citizen, it can be the dissent of a foreign national. For example, if a state doesn't like the human rights activity of the foreign national, then the state will I guess, collaborate with intelligence agencies, and these intelligence agencies will work to undermine your human rights activity and uh, your status in the host country. Now, when we are thinking about transnational repression, we're often thinking about states that are in the global north, states that are in the global south, such as the states that often come to mind are like China or um, sometimes Russia, China, Turkey, and a lot of African and Middle Eastern countries come to mind when we think about transnational repression. But, ladies and gentlemen, don't be fooled. Um, there are states in the global north that are partaking in transnational repression. These countries are the Republic of Ireland, the United States of America, and Northern Ireland. Now, what is unfortunate about transnational repression, or I think I think what is disappointing about transnational repression is that what it seeks to do is to sow doubt in the minds of other people, to isolate the researcher, the human rights defender, the activist, the student, the journalist, etc., so that they can facilitate abuse. Now, the reason why I'm going to be going in detail about transnational repression today is because today I received uh, communication from a university. I'm not sure if the communication came on an earlier date, but I checked my inbox today, and the head of school at my university here at Queen's University Belfast has stated that she wants to talk to me because somebody launched a complaint against me. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not going to this meeting. And the reason why I'm not going to this meeting is I'll explain. One, I've been very careful as a victim of transnational repression, understanding how states can co opt unsuspecting individuals. I've been very careful about the things that I say, anything that I do, so as to not have an allegation launched against me. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I believe that this allegation that's being launched against me at the university, I have no idea what it is. I have no idea what I've done. I can't think of anything that I've done. All I've done is talk positively about this university. I've talked positively about Dr. Santanye. I've talked positively about Dr. Brunger. I've talked positively about Dr. Dr. Olady. I've talked positively about, all Dr. Liam. I've talked positively about all of my professors, even if I don't agree with their approach that some of them take in their teaching. But realistically speaking, I actually enjoy the approach that many of them do take. But I think what's disappointing here is that what I've done here at the university is just try to be a critical student. I haven't engaged in any argumentation with any students. I haven't got into any fights with any students. I haven't yelled or screamed at any student. I don't know what this complaint could be about. And all I can do is tie this complaint that has been launched against me to my complaint that I made with the Equality Commission even before this complaint was launched against me. So I think that this complaint was submitted to the head of school on the 3rd of April. And I actually, so before the 3rd of April, I was in communications with the Equality Commission on filing a complaint against these intelligence agencies for their institutional practices of racism. And not only that, but also abusing their intelligence practices, which go against the statutes of Northern Ireland. And so, what I can come to understand, ladies and gentlemen, is that this complaint is just a ruse to direct attention away from the illegal practices that these intelligence agencies, or we'll get into that, these intelligence agencies are participating in. And they're trying to do a number of things. One, they're trying to take me away from my assignments so that I can spend more time focusing on, for example, these complaints. So right now they're trying to get me, trying to drown me in a lot of procedural matters. So for example, I had to do that complaint with the Equality Commission all by myself, which was like 20 pages. And then before that, ladies and gentlemen, the lecturers here at the university had given me low scores on my assignments. And what I mean low scores, so I got a B on one assignment that I disagree. I think that it should have been higher. And then I got a C on another assignment, which I think should have been higher. And my reasoning is supported in evidence because, for example, one of the lecturers stated that there were 500 words missing from my assignment. And ladies and gentlemen, I submitted evidence that when I submitted the assignment, that all of the words were available. It was actually at the word count, which was 4,500, probably maybe 10, possibly 10 words below that. But even that I submitted that evidence, ladies and gentlemen, that evidence was not taken into consideration. This is evidence to me that Northern Ireland is complicit in transnational repression. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let's go back to the very beginning. I was in the Republic of Ireland and I filed an international protection claim against the United States for institutional racism. And I had a new relationship with Ireland. There shouldn't have been any reason as to why Ireland and myself have been in any kind of confrontation. And then the United States and Ireland, they collaborated together and they decided to get me out of the country. And the way in which they did that was by co opting the asylum community, turning the Muslim asylum seekers against me. And then after they did that, they knew that I would actually write about it because, of course, I am working to be a writer and a researcher. And sometimes the best way for me to actually uh, what's cathartic for me is to write about the issues that I deal with. And they understand this. They read my memoir. They know exactly everything that's in my memoir. They've actually ripped my memoir apart and tried to use the content in my memoir against me. So these intelligence agencies, they know me quite well. And that's not the problem that I have. I don't have a problem that they know me. I have a problem that they are going after me for no particular reason. It's okay that you know me, but you could be spending your time doing other things. For example, there has been multiple threats to national security in the Republic of Ireland that have not been addressed adequately. There have been a number of attacks against asylum seekers, racial minorities in the Republic of Ireland that hasn't been addressed adequately. There has been a number of incidents in Belfast against racial minorities that have not been adequately addressed. There have been groups of people that have actually burned down places of worship, places of stores where people buy cultural food. And none of those people are being surveilled and intimidated. And it raises the question as to, are intelligence agencies really allocating their resources responsibly? And my answer to that question is no. And the reason why my answer to that question is no, ladies and gentlemen, for the specific reason, I need to just make sure that we're still doing fine with our volume. Okay. The reason why I would argue no is by virtue of what the intelligence agencies have been putting me through for the last 4 years. Let's take it back once again. I'm just an American. I am a Black American. I'm a descendant of slaves. I am not a part of any other racialized group. In a sense, I would consider myself indigenous to the United States of America because my people were brought from the continent of Africa to the United States. And of course, when that happened, there was really nobody here on the land, or there was really nobody there in the United States of America. And so, as a Black American who has dealt with multiple acts of systemic and institutional racism, I decided, you know what? Enough is enough. I don't want to deal with this anymore. So I said, where can I go to actually be a part of a community and not have to really struggle with learning a new language and start my life over in a country that really respects me? And so I chose Sweden, and Sweden has a good grasp of the English language. And that didn't work out well. I mean, before that, I was in Canada because Canada speaks English, but that didn't work out. But going back to Sweden, because I'm talking about Europe specifically, that didn't work out well because, of course, there was intervention, and Sweden didn't see the United States as an unsafe country. And I was okay with that. And so Sweden gave me the opportunity to leave on my own volition, and I chose to leave that country. And then I went to the Republic of Ireland, and then that's where all the trouble happened. That's when the Republic of Ireland usually there's not a lot of opportunity for the Republic of Ireland to exercise its bucket list racism against unsuspecting individuals and people of color. And so United States gave the Republic of Ireland an opportunity to do this through its intelligence agencies and through its cyber hackers who are a mix of white men, and of course, there are some Arabic men as well. And it could be other men that are contained within this group. So, as you can see, I didn't have a damaged relationship with the Republic of Ireland because I was new to the country and never said anything horrible about the Republic of Ireland until the Republic of Ireland, one, did not protect my right to asylum as it does with other international protection applicants. And two, it started to go after me. It started to attack me just for simply exercising my right to freedom of expression, which is enshrined in Article 10 of the European Convention on Human Rights. Now, after I went through a period in the Republic of Ireland of coercive attacks by these intelligence agencies co-opting these asylum communities that I live in and telling people around me to, you know, engage in this really bullying behavior and then making my living space unbearable, what I decided to do was to really retreat. And I left the Republic of Ireland. And I said, you know what? If that's the Republic of Ireland, they don't want me in their country, fine, I'll leave the country. But ladies and gentlemen, I learned that the Republic of Ireland is not satisfied, nor is the United States, because they're out for blood. They want blood, and they want me to be on my knees to where I can't get up anymore. And that's really unfortunate, ladies and gentlemen, because all I'm doing as a student is doing what every other student does, but yet all the other students here at Queen's University are being protected. No one is eviscerating their rights, but yet my rights are being eviscerated, and then no one is saying anything about it. And it's quite unfortunate, ladies and gentlemen, because just the other day there was a symposium called "Let's Not Talk About Racism." That was the title of the symposium. And at that symposium, there were a lot of people there that I did go to and ask for their protection and their intervention, and they didn't protect me and they didn't intervene on my behalf. But I didn't bring that up because you know what? That wasn't about me in that moment. And so at that symposium, there were a lot of researchers there that were uh, or actually giving an abstract on the research that they did on racism within Northern Ireland. And everybody in that room was talking about racism. And everybody in that room did research on racism. So why is it that when I'm doing research about racism, is that for some reason these intelligence agencies and the School of Law is finding a problem with it? I think the problem is, ladies and gentlemen, is that when you're Black and you're a Black American, you're not supposed to talk about racism. You're supposed to just put up with it. And so everyone else can talk about the racism, but when you're Black American, you're supposed to just be okay with it. And I think what is very interesting about this topic, ladies and gentlemen, is that they understand that I'm not okay with it, that I am going to talk about racism. Now, my professor, Yassin Brunger, I had a meeting with her, and in the meeting, she stated, well, your work seems to be uh, talking about the same thing because, ladies and gentlemen, I wrote a piece where I was talking about extrajudicial executions in the United States involving Black women, such as Sonia Massey, Breonna Taylor, and other women, such as a woman named Latoya. So we have that piece that I wrote that has to do with uh, institutional racism and or racism being perpetrated by the police force, and also it has to do with the right to life and extrajudicial executions. And then I wrote a piece about on discourse, hypocrisy, in Western society. And that dealt with the hypocrisy of the United States on its coverage of the January 6th incident. And then when Black Americans go out and protest, for example, during the George Floyd incident, there was, I guess, when we look at it in context, ladies and gentlemen, that we weren't treated the same. So, for example, I wasn't there, but Black Americans weren't treated the same. They were treated markedly different. They were treated unfavorably as compared to their white counterparts. So the January 6ers in the United States of America were actually given free rein to terrorize the Capitol, and Black Americans protesting the unalivement of a Black man on the streets. They were met with a police force in riot gear, tear gas, and attacks, and much, much more. And then, ladies and gentlemen, the other piece that I wrote was about the dehumanization of myself, which dealt with an apologies. And so in that paper, I described my situation in the Republic of Ireland, the ill treatment that happened that is against the Convention Against Torture. And also, I described, ladies and gentlemen, in that piece about what an apology means and why the Republic of Ireland should apologize to me for the way that it treated me as being in a country as an asylum seeker, asking for its protection, and yet it didn't actually respect my asylum claim, nor did it protect me when it had an obligation to. It had a positive obligation to protect me. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I think when we look at my work as a critical student at this university, yes, I have written extensively about racism. And I am going to be writing about racism because I am gaining an expertise in the studies of racial injustice. So it only makes sense for me as an academic and as a researcher to write very critically on the subject that I want to be an expert on and the subject that I really know well. And I think that's what bothers the academics here at Queen's University is that I understand covert racism and I understand overt racism. And oftentimes, ladies and gentlemen, when we talk about racism, and I'm not talking about all the academics here. I'm pretty sure that a lot of academics here understand both of them. And so a that's not an attack launched against the academics here. But what I am saying is that I happen to be a person that through the studies that I've done here at the university, through the studies that I've done at the University of Arizona, and just through my own autodidacticism, I happen to be a person that really understands racism very well. Now, this brings me to how does racism tie in with transnational repression? And how it ties in with transnational repression, ladies and gentlemen, is because racism is often a crime. It is a human rights violation. It can be a hate crime. It can lead to somebody life being taken away from them. We only need to look back in history at the transatlantic slave trade. We only need to look back in history at lynchings. We need to only look back in history when we were talking about Jim Crow, when if someone drank from a water fountain, they were beat up or attacked or they lost their life. So racism in essence is a criminal offense. And so because I understand that, ladies and gentlemen, because I am cognizant that racism is the criminal elements of white supremacy and racism, I have these intelligence agencies, these leaders that are attacking me. And ladies and gentlemen, their demographic. Let's talk about their demographic and why they're attacking me. The demographic of these men that are attacking me are white. They're white men, they're American, Irish American men, and there is a mixture of Arabic men who have uh, these IT skills that are part of an incel group that don't have anything else better to do. Let's consider their activities, ladies and gentlemen. What person with a normal life would watch a person through a webcam or through a surveillance camera 24 hours, 7 days a week for a year, 2 years? That is somebody that doesn't have a life. And that is somebody who has a severe problem with their, well, I'm not a doctor and I can't give diagnoses. But what I will say is that that appears to me, just if I am to guesstimate, that appears to me as very voyeuristic. And it seems like it is an obsession of these men that are behind the cameras. And so these men are very influential because this is the only way that they can win. They can't win any other way. They can't win if they level the playing field. The playing field has to be unleveled. And that's why they hide behind the cameras, because they're cowards and they don't have any courage to actually sit before me and tell me what the problem is that they have with me. And so what they do is they hide behind these cameras and then they try to malign my relationships, or excuse me, malign my character and sever the relationships that I do have with family members, friends that I'm trying to build, to make me out to be a bad person and a horrible person. And ladies and gentlemen, this all goes back to racism. For example, there was a confidential informant who is alleging that her name is Nora. She is alleging that she is a person with disabilities, which I disbelieve. I don't believe that she is a person that has disabilities. But again, I'm not a doctor, so I don't know. But what I do know is at the time that I met her at an art event, she had a necklace or a lanyard around her neck that said that she was a disabled person. Now, whether or not this is true, who knows? But she certainly didn't, uh, her behavior and the disability that she said that she had didn't seem to connect. And so, ladies and gentlemen, moving on to this, she falsely accused the United States of summoning her to the embassy and questioning her about her activities as they relate to me. And she went on this tirade about the United States Embassy, questioning her about how she came in contact with me, for her to be careful, etc. Now, I don't believe for one moment that this was the United States of America. I think that this was the Republic of Ireland and its intelligence agencies attempting to try and get me to be nervous and anxious about the United States. Now, I already know the United States and I, we don't have a really good relationship. Our relationship is very rocky. But one thing that I do know, ladies and gentlemen, as being a very critical student, is that the United States wouldn't send an informant to me and have that informant inform me that the United States sent them. That doesn't seem to make sense, right? And so, ladies and gentlemen, when I discovered that this woman was just a confidential informant that wasn't good for my life, I decided not to even talk to her. I think I've seen her like twice. Once at the art gallery, two, I seen her at the library. I invited her to my the hotel that I was living in. so in the hotel, that the asylum seeking hotel that I live in, or that I was living in at the park in, ladies and gentlemen, there is like a dining room. And I said, you know what, she should come here and eat in the dining room. And so I invited her there to eat in the dining room. She left. And then when she came back, so she came back unannounced, ladies and gentlemen. That's when she told me the story about United States summoning her to the embassy. And so at that point, I was like, this person, I just don't believe her. And the fact that she is telling me this story just doesn't make sense. So I'm just going to keep my distance from her. And so, ladies and gentlemen, the second incident that I had with this woman who is alleging that she's disabled, which I think there's probably evidence to refute that allegation, is at Queen's University. Now, keep in mind, she was not a student at Queen's University, but she appeared at the library at Queen's University. And she approached me and she was like, hey, how are you doing? And I just knew that there was going to be trouble. So I just did my best to get away from her. Right. And so I tried to talk to one of the gentlemen, or this gentleman that is at, who actually works in the library, talk to him. And then after I spoke to him, like, she was trying to talk to me. So I was like, okay, let me talk to her. And then I was like, okay, so how are you doing? And she's like, I'm fine. And how have you been doing? And so we had like small talk for a little bit. And then we continued to have this little small talk. And then I asked her, I was like, she's like, what have you been up to? I've been trying to, be a part of this university. I'm, happy that I'm here. And I was like, so you, and this is what I did, ladies and gentlemen. I brought up the situation about the U.S. Embassy. I said, so you alleged that the U.S. Embassy summoned you, and you said that there was like an email. I was like, can you tell me like who the person is, or like, can you show me like the email? And then she was like, no, because you didn't contact me, et cetera, et cetera. And I was like, you know what? That's fine. I just don't believe you. And I just think that you're a confidential informant. And it's just, I don't want to have anything to do with you. And ladies and gentlemen, I got up, didn't touch her, didn't even attack her or anything, got up and left. And then this is when she said, oh, she is assaulting me. Da, da, da. And ladies and gentlemen, keep in mind that there was a guy that was there who was in that environment that actually told them that nothing like that happened. And so her allegation was, it didn't go anywhere. But ladies and gentlemen, I bring that up because I wonder if this complaint that is being launched against me has anything to do with this person who I decided to befriend, and the person just ended up being a confidential informant. Now, ladies and gentlemen, when you are going through transnational repression, what happens is that there is a significant power differential. So you'll attempt to create bonds and relationships in this new host country. But essentially, what will happen is that those bonds will be overtaken by a powerful authority figure that has a lot of financial influence. And so, with this financial influence, these intelligence agencies are very persuasive, and money speaks louder than any kind of genuine, significant relationship or friendship. And so, ladies and gentlemen, all of the connections that I've attempted to forge here in the Northern Ireland have been actually eclipsed by the financial pockets of these intelligence agencies, these very deep pockets. And so the question is, what is it that they really want? Well, in my complaint to the Equality Commission that I submitted, I specifically stated that if they want me to leave Northern Ireland, all they have to do is say, Kiana, leave Northern Ireland, and I will leave. Like, I will finish my degree and I will leave. But that doesn't seem like what they want, because that's a very simple thing, right? And that doesn't seem to be anything as to what they're looking for. It appears to me what they really want is they really want to exercise this bucket list racism. And now bucket list racism, I am just making up a term on the spot. I think I heard it in a live by a very influential um, by an influential YouTuber or person that's on Twitter X. So I can't take credit for it, but I think essentially how they describe bucket list racism is where you have these people who really haven't got the opportunity to actually attack a person, especially a Black person with racism. And so when they get the opportunity to do that and they feel like it's their last chance before they die, is something that they are engaging in. And essentially, that is exactly how they explained it in this live. So this is what I think is happening is that we have all these people in the Republic of Ireland and in Northern Ireland that are unable to actually take their anger out, to live out their anger on minorities, because, again, let's think about it. They can't live out their anger on Muslims because Muslims are in a large group. And so there's strength in numbers. So if you attack a Muslim, either in the Republic of Ireland or you attack a Muslim in Northern Ireland, you're going to get a large community that is going to come out in a unified force and stand against that. Same thing with any other nationality. But with Black Americans, there is few and far between. It's rare to see a Black American abroad, especially in these countries. Now, that doesn't mean that Black Americans don't travel and they haven't gone abroad or they're not abroad. But specifically, like in the Republic of Ireland, here, it's rare to see a Black American. I think I've ran across 2 or 3 Black Americans here in here in Northern Ireland. And one Black American that I ran into that actually goes to this university had a similar experience. This Black American talked to me about how he has gone through a racism so entrenched in the systems here that what it did to him is it isolated him and it caused him to actually, you know, for a year, like he was just like on this island by himself. Now, he was there at the symposium on Let's Not Talk About Racism. He actually spoke at the symposium there, but I just didn't actually wake up in time to hear him speak. And so I missed the testimony that he gave, but we did talk uh, on a few occasions about his experiences, and I believe him. I believe that he's gone through what he told me that he went through. He's not the only person, ladies and gentlemen. There was another Black American that was present who told me that he had lived in the Republic, in Northern Ireland since 1997. So he lived here since 1997. I guess that's when he came here. And he said that when he came here, everything was fine. And so, ladies, as we were talking, I was like, "So, what's been your experience here? Do you like it?" And he was like, "It's kind of weird." And I was like, "Well, what do you mean by that?" And this is not to cast aspersions on Northern Ireland, because many of the people that I have met here are very nice, and many people that I've met here are, I think, genuine and have a soft spot in a genuine place in their heart for people of color. But I think, and I'm going to get back to that story about this gentleman, but before I do that, I want to say that I think what is causing the division are these intelligence agencies or these people in power that just don't like to see unity. Now, I'm going to elaborate. See, there's a lot to talk about, but let me get back to the gentleman. So we were discussing, just kind of talking, small talk, and then he says, "So, what has your experience been like? Excuse me, what has your experience been like here?" And I said, "I have come to understand that it's quite different as well." And then he was like, "Well, tell me about it." And I was like, "Well, what do you mean by that?" And then he was like, "It's just weird." And I was like, okay, well, I said, well, I noticed that like whenever so basically right now I'm doing a dissertation and it's on political repression. And it has to do with the silencing of marginalized voices, specifically Blacks, Black Americans. And when they speak out against systemic racism or institutional racism, they're being told that their experiences are a figment of their imagination. And he said, that is what I'm going through right now. God is my witness, ladies and gentlemen. That is exactly what he said. He said, that is exactly what I'm going through right now. He says, I'm going through an instance where I'm living in a place, and I think he said that he's living in a place called something choice or something like that. But he was like, he's living in a place and he experienced racism, and that when he spoke out about it, that what happened, ladies and gentlemen, was that he was attacked. He was attacked physically. And not only was he attacked, but he was told that it was a figment of his imagination. It wasn't real. And ladies and gentlemen, this leads me to question as to whether this practice is systemic, whether there are voices that are being silenced, that are not being heard, that are going through this racialized practice that is being governed by the United States, because you know the United States is a country that is directing these satellite states and teaching them how to oppress. So it begs the question as to whether this practice has touched the lives of other minorities and specifically Blacks, and whether or not where are those voices at, right? Where are those people at? And are they alive to talk about their experiences? Now, ladies and gentlemen, again, to support this this argument, I mean, it's easy to go to that symposium. Hold on, for example. So I'm going to share my screen. So this was the event that I went to. And as you can see, it says, early 2024 saw an anti-immigration protest rally at the City Hall of Belfast and the rioting in South Belfast in subsequent days. In the immediate surroundings of Queen's University Belfast and along Botanic Avenue, Belfast's most multicultural street, the shops of minority ethnic people were vandalized. Over several days, race hate crimes were directed against homes and businesses belonging to Black and minority ethnic people across Northern Ireland. While on this occasion, the riots took off after the nativist British nationalists had mobilized racist elements in society. So it goes on to talk about this situation, right? And it says, our workshop invites contributions from academics, practitioners, and community activists to join in the discussion on the impact that the oversight of everyday and explicit racism has in contemporary Northern Ireland. We invite proposals for individual paper contributions and or panels that engage empirically, conceptually, and normatively with racism in Northern Ireland and welcome comparative research, including that on societies in the Republic of Ireland and Great Britain. The workshop will be in person and will take place, and then it gives the dates. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I attended this, let me stop sharing my screen. I attended this symposium. This is what I've been talking about, but I didn't actually present. I wasn't a speaker at the symposium because one, I am very busy here at the university doing a lot of my assessments. And two, I really wanted to go there as a guest and hear exactly everyone else's perceptions about racism here in Northern Ireland. But, ladies and gentlemen, I think what is being left out of this discussion, and that is not to denigrate the discussion, but I think what is being left out of this discussion is this covert aspect of these intelligence agencies from the Republic of Ireland and the United States co-opting countries like Northern Ireland and teaching them how to hate. I think that that is what is missing from these discussions. Now, I'm quite certain that multiple individuals within that symposium understand that intelligence agencies are very dangerous and that they engage in activities like this. But yet, no one spoke out about that. No one talked about that. And I wasn't surprised. But I think what it's important now that I have got that out of the way is to try and segue into what's happening here at the university. Now, to reiterate, the head of school has sent me an email, and in the email says that there's been a complaint launched against me. And immediately, ladies and gentlemen, I was like, who could have possibly launched a complaint against me? Like, when and where could such a complaint occur? Because again, I'm often always doing my work. I haven't socialized with anyone. I only went out and socialized one time. That was at the Round the World event. That was just like a geographical quiz. And that went fine. Like I sat at the table with two women who were very nice to me and very kind to me. And we actually won. We won, and we won gift certificates or vouchers to Gancho, which is a boba shop here in Belfast. So that is proof that there wasn't anything that happened during that occasion. So I can't think of what kind of complaint could be launched against me. Now, if the complaint is this Nora woman who is not a student at this school, then it begs the question as to why Queen's University is taking on this complaint. Now, ladies and gentlemen, what I believe is happening is that there is a person at this school, and I think I know who it is, that is working in intelligence and is working behind the scenes to try and direct this school to go against me. Now, again, all I've done is done what any student has done. I've studied, I've talked about my research question in depth, I've uh, engaged in critical debates only within the classes, not outside of classes. I haven't actually hung out with any of my classmates outside of class. And so I can't think of how a complaint at this university could be launched against me. For example, when I am in the law school, there is an LLM room. And I think that they said that room is really open till 9 o'clock at night. But I really don't stay there because there is not enough people in there to really bear witness to what is happening. So, like, for example, when the time hits like 5 or 6 o'clock, I often leave there. And so I go to the graduate school and I stay there and I study. And I'm here right now in the library because this library is open on weekdays 24 hours a day. And so I'm here and you can see nobody's here but me. So like it really is mind-boggling, isn't it, about who could be launching this complaint against me. Now, referring back to this complaint, ladies and gentlemen, I won't be going to the meeting because, again, what I've learned what I've learned as being a victim of transnational repression is that oftentimes these authority figures will try and flood you in bureaucratic processes so that it takes your attention away from the things that are really important. So right now, I'm pretty sure the intelligence agency put this person, whoever this person that is launching this complaint against this baseless complaint against me, and I bet you if it is somebody at the university, it's somebody who I've been nice to, and it's somebody who smiled in my face and just actually launched a complaint against me because they needed money. And that's just really unfortunate, isn't it? Like you have people that are like desperate for money and they're willing to throw people's lives under the bus because they need to make a quick buck. And so, with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, I will reiterate that I'm not going to be attending this meeting. And I'm not attending it because, again, I can't think of anything that I've done wrong. I've been like, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to be honest, I have been so busy walking back. And so I walked to the university to study, stayed multiple hours, left the university, walked back to where I live. My legs have swollen up like you wouldn't imagine. And they're not like that now, but like over like the course of a week or so, my legs were really swollen and they're just like starting to go down. And so, ladies and gentlemen, like with all that, like where is there enough time for there to be a complaint launched against me? And so these processes are really to waste your time. They're bureaucratic processes to waste your time, to take your attention off the focus. And so, ladies and gentlemen, like I said, right now I'm doing a paper. It's 4,500 words, and I'm doing a paper on the Indigenous community in Colombia, which is an Afro-Colombian Indigenous community. And the paper is about the mine there. So there's this coal mine that is in Colombia in this area. And then there's also that connection with the Republic of Ireland because the headquarters is stationed in the Republic of Ireland. And so there is a mining company called CMC Coal. And so, of course, there is this mining company that is in this mining business corporation that is in Colombia. And there is this coal business that's in the Republic of Ireland. And so there is a unfortunate situation, ladies and gentlemen, that's happening to the people in Colombia, where this mining company has caused cancer, has actually caused respiratory issues. And not only has it done that, but ladies and gentlemen, it has claimed the lives of some of these indigenous people. And so I'm very connected to this case that I'm researching as part of an assessment because I'm a descendant of slaves. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I've been working diligently researching this issue, translating what is written in Spanish to English to try and get a better understanding of what has happened in this area, this indigenous area with these mining companies. And so my question that I'm putting before the markers at this university is whether corporations, specifically CMC, and maybe the corporation in Colombia or the heads of state in the Republic of Ireland should be found criminally liable. And so I'm supporting my argument with case law from the European Court of Human Rights and also cases from, I think there was a case that I cited that was from another court, which was the ICJ. And then I'm also supporting it with the Rome Statute. So I've been really invested in this work and trying to make it my own, because I really see the harm that has taken place with this community that is in the Republic of Ireland, that is in Colombia, and how these coal companies that are stationed, these Irish coal companies, have actually harmed the lives of these Indigenous people. So again, there's been a lot that has happened. So these communities that are in Colombia have been displaced from their sacred land. They actually understand the earth. They understand the community that they live in. And so this mining company, what it has done, ladies and gentlemen, is there has been multiple types of fruits that would grow in this area where they lived. And so once this company was put into place and these activities started, all that fruit and all those fruits and vegetables, like these like exotic, excuse me, these exotic fruits and vegetables, they stopped growing. And so now you have, there is famine, I guess we could say, in that area, where there is depletion of food resources. And not only that, but then you have this coal, this pollution that's or these like particles that are polluting the air from this coal mine. And then you have this getting into the systems of these Indigenous communities. And for several years, ladies and gentlemen, think about it, for several years, they complained about these activities. I think the activities, like one of the first complaint was I think it dates back to like the 90s. And then some of the complaints are like more within like 20, going back to like 2014, going forward. And so if you think about this, this is very devastating, and it bears resemblance to a lot of the crises that have taken place within the United States. You know, there was that Flint water crisis that actually impacted Black Americans. There was a crisis that happened within North Carolina that happened that impacted Black Americans as well, ladies and gentlemen. And there's a number of crises. In fact, while we're on that, so I'm reading this book. So this book is called From the Ground Up, Environmental Racism and the Rise of the Environmental Justice Movement. And so in here, like, it just talks about like essentially what's happening, and just like what's happening in Colombia, but from an American point of view, like what's been happening in the United States with communities, especially racialized communities, Black American communities. And there is like a story, it's here, ladies and gentlemen, but you can't really see it, but there's a story in Chester, Pennsylvania about some crises such as like this environmental racism. So that's an interesting book. And so I bring this up because, like I said, I'm very connected to the work I do at this university. I'm a critical student. I'm trying to do everything I can to really understand what other communities have gone through. Ladies and gentlemen, I did that the same thing in the Republic of Ireland. For example, let me show you. Hold on. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. I think it's here. So if you can see, like, this, this basically, this is just like a guide for asylum seekers. And ladies and gentlemen, I was in the Republic of Ireland. I wasn't really, I had a lot of time on my hand, although I was attending University of Arizona online. But I was around asylum seekers, and I heard a lot of asylum seekers talk about the internal flight alternative. And so that touched my heart because a lot of their claims were being denied because of this internal flight alternative. And so I wanted to help asylum seekers. So what I did was I wrote this, it's like 56 pages. It's Point of No Return, the Asylum Seeker's Guide to Internal Flight Alternative. And ladies and gentlemen, I wrote this for asylum seekers because I really cared. And actually, I didn't charge anybody for it. I didn't say, hey, you need to pay for this book. Actually, what I did was I copied it and printed it out in a color copy. And then I posted it on the bulletin board at the asylum place where I stayed. And it's saddening to know that those people, those asylum seekers, actually didn't find that useful. And what they found more entertaining was to go against me. And that's not to say all asylum seekers were doing that. Of course, some of them didn't. But you can see, ladies and gentlemen, and plus that's on Amazon. It's not. It's no one's. It doesn't cost any money. So like I actually, out of my own free time, not didn't ask anybody to do it for me. I did it myself. Researched it and wanted to help asylum seekers. But I'll show you like it on SlideShare. Okay, let me share my screen. So this is it on SlideShare, and this is basically what it looks like, ladies and gentlemen. And so I did this in 2021. And of course, I was in Cork. You can see like that's the citation that I suggested. And and I wanted to do this. Like I got this this template off of Canva. I thought it was so beautiful, and I wanted to do it where it looked very, I guess, artistic, so that it can have more appeal and look less academic for asylum seekers. And so, as you can see, like I do an acknowledgement, summary, internal flight alternative, personal circumstances, undue hardship, state and non-state agents of persecution, analyzing the internal flight alternative. And then I go through things such as a perspective assessment, the relevance, etc. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I really took my time, like doing this. I really took my time to do this and to give them something that they could read and that they could appreciate and say, look, this is something that we can use to help us. And it's just like a guide. And of course, it needs to be updated. It's just the first edition. But I really put myself into this and really thought about the people when I was creating this. And you can see this is a person in a mosque. So like you can see that I was thinking about those religious elements as well, ladies and gentlemen, when I was doing this. And so you can see, like, I really took my time. Like, this took a long time to do it, and uh, I talked about, of course, the devastations of war, that kind of impact that it can have, the armed conflict. And then there was some judgments that I chose from the European Court of Human Rights because, of course, we're in Europe, and so these were some of those, uh, I guess, persuasive judgments. And then I just cited some of the soft law that they could actually just reference. And then, of course, I concluded it and then did the references at the end. And it was something that I was really proud of. And I said, you know what, this is something that, like, I really, uh, that I really want to give back to the asylum seeker community. But I can't think, I just can't really, I don't understand why no one sees the goodness that I am trying to contribute to this society. And so, with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, I just want us to hold on. I want to make sure everything's still fine. Okay. Yeah, so I just am interested to know exactly, now that I'm returning back to the university, if who's responsible for transnational repression at this university, here at Queen's University. Who is responsible? It's not me. I'm just a student. And so, why hasn't these duty bearers at the university said, hey, well, if you are going to practice transnational repression, you can't do it at this university because this is where students are supposed to learn, and they're supposed to grow in their understanding of the world through educational content. And your activities would prohibit them from doing that. Where are the educators to say that? I don't know. And so this is just one aspect of how these intelligence agencies are working and co-opting the university. Stay tuned for part 2 because we are going to be talking about intelligence agencies that are not so intelligent. Bye-bye.